Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Emblazers show, the podcast designed for you revenue leaders who are looking for some insights that ignite growth. Get it? Ignite and blaze. That's what we did there. My name's Tim Riesterer. I'm your host today. My co-host, Abby, is off on assignment. I don't know where she is. I just thought that sounded important. And I'm excited about our guest today. And so I'm glad I have the space to ask all the questions. Our guest today is David Shacklette, a neuroscientist who spent his entire career and is on a mission to help people understand the skills that people do or don't have so that people can more accurately and validly intervene, coach, and develop people or hire in or out. A very important space that's getting more and more important. David has the cred too. He comes from Stanford and then Harvard Skills Lab. I graduated from UW-Milwaukee, so I'm already just a little overwhelmed by the credentials, David. But we're going to talk about all things skills assessment and intervention related today. Welcome to the Emblazers, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we've known each other a few months now, but it feels a little longer because so much has happened, especially in my ability to understand what you do. You introduced me to a phrase a while back called precision skills intelligence. That was new to me at the time. Now I seem to be seeing it everywhere. So you were prescient. You foreshadowed or the prophet in my life around this. But for everybody on the show, explain to me and everyone what precision skills intelligence is and why it's becoming such a hot ticket.
Absolutely. So first, it's helpful to qualify what skills intelligence is. So skills intelligence is this trend across workforce analytics and teams around how you can gather evidence of skills in your organization and how you can leverage that to do things around workforce planning, training, hiring, anything when it relates to talent. And so we've had some incredible tools over the past decade be built around this context, pulling out skills data from your business operations. But what has been, I think, lacking in the industry over this time is making sure that the inputs to these actual, analytics is precise and accurate. So the evidence of the skills that you're pulling into these fancy and really exciting dashboards is the right evidence, qualified in the right way. And so that's kind of a lead into precision skills intelligence. It's about how do you capture input for these skills in a way that is scientifically accurate and helpful to making sure that what you actually get in a talent analytics context is meaningful and helpful.
Well, and I know at Harvard, you guys were working on complex jobs, looking at things like leadership and management, and where the skills clusters, if you will, were really complex as well, and maybe subtle and nuanced and hard to predict or observe in interview or even in practice. So you worked towards those complex jobs, but you've recently started your own company. You've created a company called Skillcraft, and you've now turned your attention exclusively at this point to revenue leaders and sales teams as the thing you're going to pursue to make more precise is understanding, do you have the right talent and where do they need to develop? Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a reason for that is the area of work that we were doing at the Harvard Skills Lab was all around how do you make, traditionally called soft skills harder. So how are you quantifying skills like leadership, management, and teamwork? And so the lead into kind of the revenue space is these skills really matter in driving the needle forward in business. And you have a lot of wealth of data around, on the other end of the spectrum, how people are performing. You have analytics down to, the root on deals closed, pipeline velocity, all these different things. But there isn't as much precision when it comes to, how these soft skills are quantified. And I felt that it was a very natural lead in from the work that we were doing to bring that level of rigor into kind of this space of understanding and quantifying the skills that matter the most in closing deals.
And we're going to dive into that in the rest of our time because it's not like sales leaders don't have enough data, but the data kind of is downstream showing what's happened to the deals and maybe activity levels and other things, but not, there's a huge gap. The soft skills that allow somebody to be good at all of or any of that. It's like, okay, these things are flashing red. How do we intervene? Well, you don't even know what the limitations, the holdbacks, or the constraints are on the rep, and you're figuring that out. So we're going to dive into that, but I do have to bring this up. Your backstory was so interesting to me. That, like, what brought you to this place of like this intense missional sort of mindset around skills, intelligence, and development? I think our audience needs to hear your backstory because to me, it's both moving and inspiring.
I really appreciate it. And it's funny if you look at my past, you can look at pockets all over the place. I was once an opera singer. I was doing neuroscience. I was at one point, in a labor economics context in this skills lab. But the through line has been where it all began, which is when I was sitting across from a psychiatrist in high school trying to figure out and explain my poor performance in academics over the last few years, and expecting to hear nothing more than the classic phrase that was brought up to be that explainer, which was I was simply lazy, not bringing myself fully to the game, and was shocked when I was presented with some results of an assessment that showcased a certain skill gap that I had. Named something that I had never heard of before, a deficiency when it came to processing speed. And so that moment for me was extremely catalyzing. So, one might think, that's a moment where you're just kind of, for me, that was a moment where it gave a name it gave more precise language to something that I was having difficulty with. And the through line to the work that I've been doing and the work that I will continue to do is helping other people gain that precision of language, that kind of moment of insight on an area of weakness or something that they didn't expect to, be related to downstream performance. And so my journey through there has been in neuroscience contexts and in this current context of skills analytics and measurements, all to that end of how do you help people really take a look deeper under the surface, not just say, my results are my results, my performance, but look at what are the real skills that might be contributing uniquely to that performance.
I never get tired of that story, David, because it just speaks to me as someone who's been in and around sales for like 30 years, that our answer often when we see a dashboard light up is to just tell someone to work harder. And that's what you were faced with. Like, what is the problem? I just need to work harder. And when you got a precise diagnosis, if you will, or a precise name, it was now something you could do something about. Like, it was now actionable. It wasn't abstract and complex, and we default to the simple fill in more sheets, do more activities. Like when we're in sales, there is a precise prescriptive opportunity to fix something, and that's what's so impressive about the work that you're doing. So let's talk about that. So how does that even start? What does it take to build precision skills intelligence for salespeople?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it takes, some intentional work. It takes really trying to decode, to unbundle complex skills in your organization and how those show up in top performance. It takes working with your team to look for evidence on calls, on, good deals, on, certain tactics that individuals come into circumstances and come out with success as a starting point. So the first thing that's required is an intentional deep dive into the behaviors that are winning, and giving those, hypotheses of names and hypotheses of what contributes to those. And then from there, what it is in terms of getting to these precise skill definitions, these skill models, is it's trying to stage, performance, almost micro evaluations of those expositions. So what does it mean to break, for instance, active listening down? You think that, your reps do extremely well on deals because they're great at active listening, but what does that mean? And what does that mean in your context? And what are the contributing sub-skills that might kind of really bundle together in some kind of, weighted way in order to capture what good looks like for that context? And so then we get into a whole field that's been around for a while called psychometrics, where you can validate that you're capturing these contributing sub-skills, these contributing evidence of having these skills well enough to be able to use as kind of this pure benchmark of actual performance along those skill constructs. And then it gets really interesting.
Then it gets interesting. Well, it's already interesting. I think first validating that certain skills or expositions of those skills are actually having cause and effect, not just some sort of observation where you think that was the thing that mattered. That's the thing that mattered. So being able to define that using the data and then being able to assess someone in a way that you can actually see if they have that. And so we'll come back to how you're building that model, and because everybody right now is panicking like, oh, I got to hire a neuroscientist. We wouldn't have David on this show just to tell you to go hire a neuroscientist. David's going to tell you how he's building something you can use in a minute. But I'm going to go now to this idea like, hey, now assessments aren't new. People have built assessments. Assessments have been around. There's assessment companies out there in sales, and they portend to know which skills you should be assessing. And then they've built assessments to help determine if somebody supposedly has those skills or not. Yet you've examined this and I've looked at it, and a lot of these are based on self-assessments. I have to reflect and think, am I a 1 or am I a 5 on that skill? And while reflection is not a bad thing, it's causing someone to be a little introspective isn't horrible. It can give you some directional results. Tell me why salespeople grading their own tests is not a precise way to get skills intelligence and then draft up some interventions.
So absolutely. Self-assessment, we've known for decades, has been not the most reliable indicator of actual performance. Top performers might rate themselves, in some cases worse, they're humble, than their actual skill sets. Lower performers might overestimate their skills. This is not new at all. And when we're talking about skills intelligence and the aggregated data of skill signal, having these noisy measurements is just polluting your understanding of these skills that are uniquely important for your organization to drive results. One thing also that I'd add in that context is, it's almost a skill to rate yourself, to look at your own skills. And so, we're at least 2 steps removed when we're talking about self-assessment or manager assessment. We're talking about how good is somebody at knowing themselves? How good is somebody at knowing somebody else's skills? And so, a better step forward is performance-based assessments, where you're actually eliciting a live signal that is as close as an approximate to real performance as you can get, because performance most likely predicts performance. And so that's kind of the first step of the first principles on which we build these precision skills intelligence instruments.
Yeah, this is not a subtle, nuanced version of self-assessment. This is a 180 as far as I can tell. And I think back when my financial advisor asked me to take that risk tolerance test, and I don't know what it is, but I come out as like, I'm really risky when I answer the questions. And I think it's because I want to be seen as a risk taker. And then as soon as the stock market moves a couple of basis points, I'm freaking out. And I'm like, okay, that's actually more predictive of the kind of investor I am than the one I want to think I am. And I don't know, I've heard this phrase, you scientists use it, the idea of declared preference versus revealed preference. There's things that we declare we think we would do and how we would act. And then when we're under pressure to do it, we do something totally different than we thought or said. And it feels the same way with these assessments. I self-assess, and that's one thing, but you're talking about putting someone into an actual demonstration, into a performance, into a simulated experience. That's kind of the breakthrough here that you guys are working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really exciting just with the industry at whole, access to these AI-driven role play technologies, which is the part of the basis of the technologies that we leverage. You now have the opportunity to not only ask somebody what they think or review a call, but simulate a call, simulate a context, simulate a specific moment that you have with your buyer. The one caveat to these simulation technologies, which are extremely exciting around training, is that it takes a little bit more to get them into an assessment instrument, because where simulation becomes tricky to kind of calibrate to a skill signal is in that you can kind of take them in many places. You take them in many directions. People can respond differently, go down different paths. And so when we're trying to get to a precise and kind of isolated skill signal, we need to break these things down. And so that's what we do at Skillcraft. We kind of make simulation technologies precise and isolate skill signals within those contexts generally.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside of other organizations and learn from them and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
So for our revenue leaders in the audience, I think this next segment is going to be the most important. They now understand through our dialogue, hopefully, that they need to be more precise about identifying the right skills to ensure that this person will be successful, and then figure out what this person actually is good at or weak at, and then be able to coach and intervene, maybe apply it to hiring as well to see where somebody stands. And I picture a world where you could tailor your onboarding to their gaps as opposed to just like spreading onboarding like it's peanut butter. So upskilling, onboarding, ongoing coaching all look like opportunities. But let's talk about what it is. Like, okay, so we've built the case for it. We've talked about what needs to be in it. The reason you exist is to actually build this for the revenue industry, specifically for sellers as they engage buyers. How does it work? What is it, and what do I learn? What do I get from it?
Yeah. So as we kind of started out at the beginning, the first step, the most important step, is to start to break down these skills into their contributing parts. What is active listening? What are the contributing expositions that really makes a good active listener, for example? And so, think about it like you taking a normal test. If you were to take the ACT, there are a number of different items. Each of those items are precisely calibrated to try to pull out the skill exposition that contributes to demonstrating you're good at, mathematical things, or, reasoning, etc. And so what we do is we precisely isolate the skill signal throughout a simulated experience, throughout, an outreach context, throughout whatever it is, to be able to get that pure measurement construct for the subparts of all the skills. And then once you have that purity, then you can be sure that that skill signal can be leveraged in a cohort sample. You can compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges, in an otherwise simulated context. And that becomes extremely important when you want to use skills intelligence as a base, a reliable base for being able to, drive towards all of the outcomes that you were discussing. So hiring, whether it's initializing onboarding with precision, initializing training with reference to people's real skill gaps. And so what it looks like is, like a simulation, except, carefully interwoven under the simulation is skill capture of these unique contributing skills that are especially tuned to what good looks like for you, if that's helpful.
Yeah, so when I think about, I love the ACT example, right? I mean, you don't get a score to get you into college by reflecting and self-assessing.
That's it.
You have to demonstrate, you have to prove, you have to perform, and it's looking at what skills, knowledge, and capability you have from that perspective. So I think our listeners can imagine an experience then that's like you go into a simulation. It's I love yours. It's baked into these 3 vignettes. I like to call them vignettes. I don't know why, it's just a fancy word. And I think they're timed 10 minutes each, but you as a seller go in and you run the outreach simulation. How do you get a meeting? How do you get someone to care to get to that meeting and begin to care about making a decision? And then the second vignette is, how do you present your solution? How do you articulate value? How do you create urgency to make a decision? And then the final vignette is the justification, like getting them to done, getting them to decide, getting them to actually come to consensus and choose you. And I love how realistic it is. When I took it, I got to tell you, I sweat. I didn't cry, but I sweat. And you realize, like, I felt like I was being trained as I was taking the assessment. Is that part of the deal too? Like literally the assessment itself, like when you get to the end, you're like, I already going to know where my score is going to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something that I've heard over and over again from people that have gone through the assessment. And it's, that's really encouraging and exciting to me that, again, when you start to get closer to precision, you can start to really see clearly something that you might not have seen before. And I think one thing that's unique about our assessment technology is that in terms of those skill breakdowns, it's not just actioning language. You're not just talking or having just a back and forth conversation, but it's what do you become aware of throughout these simulations? How can you understand certain signals that might have come out in your interaction with a buyer? And then how are you leveraging that and kind of like interweaving it with various other things that are relevant in the context? And how are you actioning that? And so I think this kind of like 360, multimodal experience of participating in these simulations is kind of what's getting at that result, where it's like, oh, I had to digest what I understood. I had to work with what I understood, and I had to action what I understood. And that, I think, is what we're also going to see more and more as time goes on with, these kinds of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to imagine like somebody listening to a call recording and trying to come up with the same sort of analysis from a singular call during a deal cycle. And then even trying to stitch those together and do any kind of analysis, because what you haven't really seen is how did I learn, and then how did I apply that? And when you go through these three different motions that really represent a whole sales cycle, you see how somebody processes what they learned in the first session and then brings it to bear in the second session and then applies that to get the deal to done in the third. And so in a microcosm, and I think you call them micro simulations, you've seen the end-to-end experience. So you've condensed it in a way that you can observe the whole thing. And here's what I think our listeners need to understand is, and what I've started to grasp in your work is, you're doing the work that they don't have to. You're validating the competencies and underlying skills that have been proven predictive for wins and losses, so people don't have to. And that these are sort of universally true B2B enterprise sales types of competencies and skills. And so the assessment isn't a one-off or an ad hoc. It's on a foundation of stone, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I like to think about, this is a process. You need to calibrate to connect skill signal to outcomes to get to a reliable basis of predictive insights for the behaviors that matter. So you can scale those behaviors.
Yeah, and again, how far this then comes from the traditional manager observation, self-assessment, and even all the data signals that are lagging indicators that have no linkage necessarily to what skill is missing to improve those signals. This has just come such a long way. And I think, sort of to wrap this up, it feels like the idea of how you assess, how well you assess, is emerging in a level of importance that we all think about. Well, what's the coaching? What's the training? Well, it almost, like I would say now, it almost doesn't matter if you don't know what you're coaching and training. So I think people are going to have to more seriously look at the idea of the interrelationship between assessment and intervention, maybe more so than they have in the past, so that I would assume, so that more confidently that how you coach is going to have some impact.
Absolutely. I love that. And, what you want to get to is the right training for the right people. And that's going to have the biggest impact. But to get to that, you want to have a right basis of evidence. And so absolutely, I think, we will be going into a world where the instrument that helps us get to those insights becomes more and more important, and self-assessment are just not going to cut it.
Yeah. And I love managers as much as the next person, but their own observations come with a lot of personal preferences and biases and things like that. So something that is precise and intelligent, is valid, is calibrated, so that everything we do, we want to know that we're putting in the time on the right things. I like the joke that if I went to a gym, which I don't, I wouldn't want to waste my time. I wouldn't want to do exercises that aren't giving me the effect that I need. I think managers and trainers and enablers need to recognize this as well. You want to work on the things that person needs work on, not just because the company decided, hey, this is on the calendar and we're all going to do it. So David, any last words to share that our revenue leaders should take with them as they think about the next generation of assessment?
Yeah, well, first, just really appreciate you having me on. It's such an honor to be able to talk with you about this topic. The last thing I'll leave is just connected back to my personal story. When you get reliable insights for your team, you're going to see behavior catalyzed. Because in the same thing that happened to me, once I got the right definition for the right skill that I was missing, I did everything I could to improve. And I think that's what I'd like to leave the audience with.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't define the deficit, how do you go repair it? And but once you can and do it precisely with confidence and know that the work you're going to put in is going to matter, you'll put in the work. I mean, that's amazing. And I appreciate the personal story and how it's come all this way and thank you for doing it on behalf of the revenue community, where we are looking to make sure our teams are as productive as possible, and that those who are in place to deliver those distinctly human experiences are going to do it the best. So, David, thanks so much. Looking forward to talking to you more, working together to bring this to the market. And it's been and will continue to be a sincere pleasure.
Thank you so much, Tim.